So the rest of this, we're going to do the vertical hemming stitch. Like the slip stitch, we are going to start on, if I'm right-handed, which I am, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to start on the right side of my fabric and work towards the left, and my needle will be pointing the direction that I am going the entire time that I am sewing. And so I've put a knot in the end of this thread, just like I did before. I'm going to do the same thing, come up inside the hem, and just catch the hemmed edge, the clean finished edge, and then come out at the top of the fold there so that I can start my vertical hemming stitch. The vertical hemming stitch is also a very good stitch for hemming, very good stitch for closing seams up. It's a little bit faster than the slip stitch. Same idea, I'm going to come up, and again I do the same thing. I come right above where that folded edge is. I just catch a thread or two at a diagonal, but instead of now pulling my thread up, that same angle that I'm at, I am going to put my needle in between the hem and the garment and move over that 3/8 of an inch and down 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to pull the needle, the thread through that direction. Okay? And so I take my stitch and I slide to the next one all in one step. So it is actually a little bit faster. It gets its name because you will see a little vertical stitch along the hem on the inside of the garment every place that you sew. And so you pull that thread straight up, drop the needle just above that hemline, take your little vertical stitch, and again it now falls to the side, down that 1/8 of an inch, over that 3/8 of an inch, and take the next step. And so I get that little tiny vertical stitch that sits right there. The trick is to truly take your stitch straight above there so that this vertical stitch is vertical and isn't tipped to one side or the other. You want that stitch to truly be straight up and down. And then I tip it over, move it over 3/8 of an inch, down 1/8 of an inch. And so you can see that this actually is a little bit faster than the slip stitch, because I don't have to take the fabric, take the bite into this fabric, pull it up, then slip it through. I just let it go down behind it. So again, this stitch is called a vertical hemming stitch because of this little tiny vertical stitch that shows, or I'm going to pull this out so you can see down inside of it here. You can see there is fabric that falls down beside there, or a felling stitch because the fabric or the thread fell or falls down between the hem and the garment to the next spot. If you think of, Jack and Jill went up the hill and they fell down and broke their crowns, the thread does the same thing. It fell down in between the hem and the garment over to where the next stitch is going to be. And you will continue this felling stitch, little teeny tiny bite into the fabric right above that hem. You go straight up from where that stitch is. If it helps you, actually pull the thread up straight so you can see where you're supposed to take the stitch into it. The more you do it, the better you'll get at just going straight up without having to have that thread there and getting that little vertical stitch. Remember to always keep your needle at an angle. That angle becomes very, very helpful here because it's also the same angle that moves you over and down to your next stitch. And you will do this until you hit that left side of your fabric, and then you will tie a knot the very same way that you tied the knot at the end of the slip stitch, and you will bury your thread the same way. I got to the end, I've tied my knot. Again, if you look, you can see that little light blue vertical stitch. About every 3/8 of an inch, there's a little vertical stitch. Down between, there's the thread that fell in between. If you turn it over and look on the right side, you will see the little stitches, little teeny tiny puck marks on the right side. If your thread matches, they will be pretty blind. You won't be able to see them. And that completes your vertical hemming stitch.